Hi, welcome to Terrarium Wellbeing. This week we're going to be looking at maintenance and having a little look at the different things that go into your sanctuary in these winter months. As the nights draw in, we get to spend less and less time in nature. So it's all the more important that we think about the nature that we bring into our homes so that we can experience nature throughout the seasons. Today we're going to be having a look at some of the terrariums and looking at how to maintain them, looking at a new isopod species that has come in and creating a small tub terrarium. We're also going to be looking at the aquarium, the 90 specifically. We'll have a quick look at the 60, little update, but with the 90 we're going to break it down just a little bit, looking at the different parts of it and seeing how we can develop it a little bit further. And finally, we're going to have a look at houseplants in this season, how conditions changed, what we can do to make sure that they get the absolute best out of your houseplants during these winter months. This is Terrarium Wellbeing. Welcome. As mentioned, when the light's dimming and we get less light, there's an ample opportunity for getting those basic jobs that you need to get done with your aquascape. Think glassware, you need to be making sure that they're all nice and clean, using pipe cleaners if you've got them. Other things is you want to be thinking about, okay, has things started to shift? Have you managed to have things like migration of soil onto decorative sands? Have you got the best out of the plants? Do you need a little bit of a rethink? I mean, it's common that once a aquascape gets over about 6 months, then you're creating a different thing to do. I mean, plants often need to be topped. They need to have a variety of different thoughts about that long-term maintenance, particularly with things like crypts. You know, what we're thinking about is the density right? Does the composition still sit when the plants are starting to get much bigger? I mean, often we think of plants in their slightly smaller phase, where you've got 6 months worth of growth. A crypt will look very different, particularly over a year. Well, this aquascape's been going for just over a year now. It's in its sort of mature form. It's got a huge amount of cryptmyoia, as well as a red tiger lotus, which has been steadily growing. I think it's fair to say that both of them have started to show their truest look as far as the actual size is concerned. I think now, with this scape, it's been getting a little bit too thick. And one of the problems with that is that when you get dense-based plants, you'll inevitably make the aquascape look terribly flat. Reason being is because the thickness of the plants will cover the depth, and so you need to work that a little bit harder just to be able to develop it a bit further. As mentioned, we're now looking at the 90 centimetre. It's been with me now for over a year, and in fairness, it's come on a long way. The plants are maturing well, particularly the Cryptmyoia, which has blossomed. Yes, it's starting to show its age. There's a lot that I need to do at this aquascape, but first I'd like to have a think about how to separate it down and think about the aquascape in different sections. Often I do this with the tape. It's the idea of being able to look at each part of the aquascape as an individual part of the overall composition. You get to learn exactly how the bits of detail bring things to life. Also, it gives you an opportunity to review plants, thinking about what you might need to change. Does something need thinning? Do you need to work on more of a cohesive foreground? It's key for you to consider what exactly you want to do. This area column Vietnam is getting far too bushy for this scape, and on looking at it when separating the tank down, I can see that it's starting to mature in a way which is going to be detrimental to the tank. Often what you find is this becomes very bushy under high lighting, and as such it starts to rot in the middle, causing the chemistry of the tank to degrade. Also, the stems at the back aren't looking great. Really, they need to be topped. This means to cut them right down to the bottom and then to take the tops of the plants and plant them in. This is key for stem health, as often you'll find that if you don't do this regularly, you will start to see deterioration in the stems. I've also planted some new plants in there, which are looking a bit cramped when it comes to the actual layout. So I want to try and loosen it up. I might remove the hardscape. I might add it into a different section. The key for me is that I'm starting to think about how those plants will develop over time. Here we have the final shot. You'll notice that the left hand side is much lower now, and we've got almost an island to the right and a shorter island to the left, but this will grow over time once all the tops have rooted and things are starting to move forward with the tank. You'll notice that I have added stems towards the rear. This is to help bring a bit more height. I've also taken away a little bit of the anubias as it was starting to look cramped against other plants. I've kept the bits to the right, but it's likely that I'll remove them over time, as I don't want this to be a tight scape. I want it to feel loose. Hi, hope you enjoyed the 90 centimetre segment. Not looking its best at the moment. Give it a few weeks, let the carpets sort of fill in, get the back stems growing nice and tall, and it'll start to look its best again. I think one of the things you've got to be aware of when maintaining aquascapes on the long term is that they do need time to sort of be trimmed back and not look its finest so that it can come back with a nice bit of vigour. Now we're going to be having a look at the 60p next. It is currently struggling with a little bit of staghorn algae, but that's okay. Pretty common within a new setup. So all we're looking to do is just do a small cinematic on how it's looking at the moment. And next week we'll have a little look at how it's developed. We'll get to talk a little bit about some of the planting decisions that I made around the stems. After this, we'll be looking at some of the terrariums, having a look at a few of the isopods, building a tub terrarium for a new species that's in. I won't pretend to say its name, so I'll just put the name up on the screen. But they're an interesting species. They're more of a spiked armour isopod, so I hope that you guys enjoy. There's a lot of terrariums here in the sanctuary. They contain isopods, leaf insects, some millipedes. There's a wide range. Larry and Lisa are in this terrarium, but also added some detritivores. This is Cubaris crabby. They are in the base at the moment, and obviously the leaf insects are at the top. The ability to have the Cubaris really helps with the leaf insects, as they are able to prevent any buildup of high levels of detritus and be able to break down any fungus which would be detrimental to the leaf insects. As you can see, whilst I'm trying to maintain this terrarium, Larry's trying to move himself into the isopod enclosure. But it's alright, we'll pop him back shortly. We'll let him have a little adventure. When looking to maintain a leaf insect enclosure, the main things for me are visibility. So I'm in a hard water area. I could use RO water, but I tend to use a standard tap water as it's more convenient for myself. And because of that, calcium builds up on the terrarium. This needs to be cleaned down, and also there needs to be some new foliage put in. Larry and Lisa will not react well if there is poor quality dying leaves. Although they're not necessarily after the very, very young leaves, having dying leaves in the enclosure will end up causing them some health issues. So renewing them is really quite important. When it comes to keeping detritivores, things are very different. This is the isopod enclosure. There are two types.
There's Cubaris panda and red panda in there. I mean, the main thing is ensuring that they have enough access to foods. This includes calcium-based foods and wood chips. That is basically white wood. If you can't get it locally, buy it in from a reputable isopod dealer is quite important. But not everyone can afford to have glass enclosures. And in fact, a lot of the time when starting a new species, it's important to give them an enclosure which you can monitor them quite closely. This is a tub-based terrarium that I'm building. The basics are is to build a nice substrate. I'm adding a reptile moss to start, wetting it down, and this will act as a nice binder to keep moisture within the soil. Adding a spider bedding is a nice cheap way to be able to create a soil that is not packed with bacterial things that could grow in it. So a good way forwards. Adding in the woods at the start and then mixing together will mean that when the Cubaris are actually, or shall I say isopods, are digging their way through the substrate, there is foods inside. Obviously you'll want to hide somewhere that they can move to a area where there's airflow, but at the same time is dark. They won't actually eat cork barks, but they are likely to hide underneath, which also gives you an opportunity to see them. I like to place mosses around the outside. This helps to keep locking that moisture when the soils are wet. As long as you've got a nice drier area and wetter area for the isopods, you'll find that they'll be able to show themselves across the mosses and under leaf litter that you might add afterwards. The newest species that we have so let's have a look. This species I've brought in, and they are still very young. They look a little bit like tiny pineapples. They have a spiked outer shell, and they are a species that is really quite interesting to watch. These guys need some really careful care. You need to make sure that there's a good gradient from a wetter area to a drier area. So placing a large amount of mosses to the one side and then maybe paring it back a little bit towards the back so that you can water one side quite heavily and keeping the other side quite dry will allow them to moderate their humidity levels and how much they need themselves. When tub enclosures are bought from reputable reptile and insect distributors, they'll often come with these little holes. This is great for airflow, but really you want to be able to manage that a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is add a fine mesh. This will prevent them from getting out the holes, but also will allow me to open the enclosure a little bit so that they can get a little bit more air. I look forward to sharing about these isopods as they start to develop. And obviously this terrarium is going to be running for some time before we do a build for them as their population increases. I look forward to sharing it as we move forward.
Before we move on to the final segment, this is Holly. She's the newest member of the family here at the sanctuary. She's a show cocker spaniel. She only recently came in. She's now 9 weeks old and is having a really good time of things. Oh, that's my microphone. Our next segment is on plants and what things you can do just to maintain them through the winter. Here's a slightly different process to keeping houseplants in winter. Some go through some phases. They go sort of a more dormant in winter. Things like spider plants are a key one, where you reduce your watering and you try to maintain the foliage through limited watering and keeping them in direct sunlight. As winter's happening, obviously we're getting a lot less light. So this segment's going to go through what things you can do to make sure you get the absolute best out of them in these winter months.
Caring for houseplants in winter is really important. They obviously are in an enclosed environment that allows them to stay more stable than they would if they were outside. But with the light dimming, it's very important that we start to take some action to help them out. Watering should be limited depending on the species. And what I recommend is that you undertake general maintenance. Cleaning the leaves is a key factor. We want to make sure that what light they can get, they can maximize. It also helps with the visual effects of the plant, as obviously you're shining it, really. I mean, this species here is creeping up a wall. So we need to think about not just the leaves at the bottom that have the access to water. We need to be bringing that water to the top by spraying the top leaves and then being able to water the pole in the inside so that the sections that are attached are able to draw water from there. It's a common mistake when it comes to creeping plants to not water the pole on the middle. It is there for you to be able to sodden with the water so that it can draw it from the roots that are actually aerial. So each individual node has a set of roots that can draw water from, which is why very often when you find that they go away from the pole, you find smaller leaves. Terrariums are also important, particularly as in this period, you're going to find that light becomes quite sparing for them unless you have a dedicated light. This one, which we built a while back, has got some Anubias. Obviously, that is a low light species, so quite useful in some respects in this season. But we'll need to undertake our maintenance. First thing we want to think about, particularly as it's an Anubias-based one, is fertilization. Having a house plant fertilizer is perfectly fine with an aquatic species. It is growing aerially. So we actually want that to be able to provide what we would do through a column-based dosing. So adding it to the water is really important before you start to undertake spritzing this plant. Once you're actually ready to spray, just make sure that you're coating each leaf and that you're covering the roots. This is actually quite a nice book that I found. I'll probably feature it a bit later on during the socials. Make sure you follow along on the social posts, as often I provide things like books, ideas, and also things like aromatherapy-based ingredients for making scents. A lot of the well-being-based things that we do are recorded on the posting section, so follow along. A key element to terrariums is making sure the glass is clean. Obviously, we've talked about this with the enclosures, but I think when it comes to terrariums that are predominantly plant-based, we need to be making sure that the domes are really quite clean. That way they can draw on the light from the aquariums or from the outside. In fact, one of the things is that I'm finding that in winter you will find leaves that are affected more by the lower light. They get shaded out, and it's a good time for growth. Plants like to grow up nice and tall in the winter because they're reaching to find light, but those lower leaves will need trimming back so that they're not wasting energy on leaves which are dying off due to overshading. One key idea that I would recommend is adding grow lights. I have an idea for using an aquarium light for this. As long as it's full spectrum, plants will be able to thrive.
I'll tell you more about that in the next episode. I'm afraid, given the length of this video, that's all we have time for here at the sanctuary. Just like to thank everyone who's been following along throughout this year. It means an awful lot to me, and I'd like to wish each and every one of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hype this video if you can. Till next time, enjoy.